tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agriculture and New Directions, Agri-Business. I am Wadzanai Manyore. So this is a platform where we discuss the challenges and issues in the business side of agriculture right here in Zimbabwe. In this particular episode, we are going to be talking of investing in irrigation equipment. Now, if you look at the UN Agenda Sustainable Development Goals 2030, the first SDG talks of no poverty alleviation. The second SDG talks of no hunger, and the 12th one talks of sustainable production and consumption. Now, we cannot ignore irrigation in Zimbabwe if we are going to be talking of sustainable production. I have taken the liberty of inviting the Chief Executive Officer of Maka Irrigation. It is located in Rua, right here in Harare. Thank you, Mr. Spanda, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now, as we get right into it, we are talking of investing in irrigation equipment. Definitely, we cannot ignore irrigation equipment at the moment, given our climatic conditions, the changing weather, the changing rainfall patterns. What is your comment when we say we are investing in irrigation equipment?
I think a few years ago, maybe 2 decades or so ago, you could afford to go into agriculture and not invest in irrigation. But with the climate change, if you don't invest in irrigation, you are not in business.
That's true.
I think farming is a business.
That's true.
And farming is a science.
Yes.
And so you have to put in all your ingredients, the right quantities at the right time to achieve the expected results.
Yes.
If you don't put in irrigation, then you need to be very prayerful.
You need to be prayerful, as in now you are believing in something else, because on the ground you do not have irrigation.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of things have changed. The weather patterns have changed. If you look at the past 2-3 years, the weather people will tell you that we've been getting average to above average rains.
That's true.
But what happens is that when does it come? How does it come? So you have dams filled up.
Yes.
But filling up at the wrong time, or having mid-season droughts, that's very long.
That's very true. So, dry spells.
Yes. So if you are not investing in irrigation, you end up having a situation where you plant and it wilts, and you plant again, and at the end of the day, I think it's the main thing to do.
Yes.
Investing in irrigation should be actually our main focus going forward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Innocent, for that. That was very precise. Now, looking at irrigation, just from your own understanding, we understand there are short-term investments, there are long-term investments. How would you classify? Because our Zimbabwean farmers, some of them will just look like, I have spent money, I need to see results now. How would you classify irrigation? Is it a long-term investment that is going to sustain your production activities at your farm in the long run, or is it short-term? What can you say about that?
Farming on its own has never been a short-term game.
Yes.
You when you go in there, you really have to go in long-term.
Yes.
So if you are going to irrigate or plan on irrigation short-term, then you are just going to waste your money and your time.
Yes.
I think the proper thing is to look at your farm, do a proper plan for irrigation.
Yes.
Yeah, do 20, 25, 30-year plan. You know,
yes.
and then develop it stage by stage up until you get to where you're going to. Okay. Because without that, like I said before, we are just wasting time. You can have everything that you want, but as long as you don't have your water and you have it in good time, you have it in the right proportions, you're wasting your time.
Yes, it's like chasing the wind. Now, as I take your focus away from that a bit, let us talk of modes of irrigation that you think maybe you would recommend to Zimbabwean farmers, given that you are into manufacturing irrigation. Obviously, you're an irrigation expert. What would you say maybe to our Zimbabwean farmers, our local farmers, in terms of equipment that you feel is viable at the moment? It will achieve goals, it will increase productivity, it will make someone repay their debt. Because at the moment, most Zimbabwean farmers are struggling with debt. Some of them are failing to pay the institutions that financed them because of weather conditions mainly. What sort of mode of irrigation would you recommend to a local Zimbabwean farmer?
I'm glad you said lots of farmers are failing to pay because of the weather conditions.
Yes.
So it goes back to what we were talking about initially. But I'll tell you that our main crops here are our cereals, your grains. And there's so many ways of doing grains. There's your flooding, there's your sprinkler irrigation, overhead irrigation.
Yes.
Some use drip, some use center pivots. And like we said initially, some pray that the rain comes.
The rainfall will come.
But I'll tell you that when you look at the efficiencies of all those systems,
yes,
at the moment the pivot is tops.
Okay.
Yeah, you're talking of 95% efficiency.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can put in your water at the right time, at the right quantities, and put it in such a way that your plant is able to use that water.
Okay.
So for your grains, I'll tell you without hesitation, the center pivot is the way to go. The pivot is the way to go. It's very flexible. You need very little labor. It's one of the best that we have at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? Now that you've talked of efficiency, I want you to maybe enlighten our viewers, our audience, in terms of the cost-benefit analysis. Was right now with the prevailing economic conditions, we're sort of like struggling a bit. Our Zimbabwean farmers may just look at spending on irrigation as an expenditure, as a cost, and they might overlook the benefits that come with investing in irrigation equipment. Now, maybe talking of efficiency, sustainability, what is your comment in terms of the cost-benefit analysis of irrigation equipment?
It differs, like I said, there's a number of irrigation equipments that you can use. But the one that I said is tops, which is your center pivot.
Okay.
When you look at it initially, putting up a center pivot is not a stroll in the park. I'll be the first to agree.
Okay.
But a center pivot is the last one of between 15 to 25 years.
Okay.
Yeah, in your field.
Okay.
And with the figures that we've done, you can actually pay it off in 3 years.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sibanda, I'm very sorry, I'm going to have to cut you short. Viewers, we have come to the end of the first segment. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, viewers, for staying tuned to ZBC TV. You are watching Agricultural New Directions, Agri-Business. We are in the second segment. And today we have taken the liberty of inviting the Chief Executive Officer of Maka Irrigation, Mr. Innocent Sibanda. Now, earlier on, you were talking of the cost-benefit analysis, the benefit that comes with investing in irrigation equipment. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to write that up before we go to the next question.
So I was just saying to you that you find that you can pay for it within the first 2-3 years,
yes,
maybe 4 years if you have any problem. But you have this machine in your field for the next 11 to 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and these things, we actually repair them locally, we service them locally, we stock the spare parts locally, so it's a walk in and walk out situation. So so I think whatever investment you would have put in, I'm sure any financial analyst would tell you if you can pay for it in 3 years, and then continue having it for another 15-20 years, it's a very good investment.
Yes, and thank you for that. Now, as we move forward from the cost-benefit analysis a bit, I have alluded earlier that Sustainable Development Goal number 12 on the United Nations Agenda 2030 talks of sustainable production and consumption. We are talking of sustainable production at the moment. Now, what is the importance of irrigation? Maybe you can cite advantages, because as we were talking, maybe we might have overlooked advantages, but what can you cite as the major advantages that come with investing in irrigation in Zimbabwe at the moment?
I'll tell you, at times you look at our situation in Zimbabwe and and it's painful.
Yes.
to look at the number of hectares that we put that we do cropping. I mean, the amount of fuel that we put in plowing, disking,
Labor.
planting, and the amount of fertilizer, some of it imported that we have to put in there, electricity that you are going to pay, and no one is going to forgive you for a bad crop, and all that, and then you're just hoping that a rain will come. I think we need to have a sustainable, like you're saying, we need to have irrigation just makes all those things work together.
They just come together. It consolidates all of those other, production factors. They come together because of water.
Yes, I was reading a manual on maize the other day. There's a certain amount of water that you want at a certain time of planting. Yes. A certain amount of water as it grows, a certain amount of water as it's tasseling, as it's filling up, and all those things. Like I said, farming scientific. All those things have to come in at the right time.
Yes.
Average production that we're doing right now in Zimbabwe, we're doing about less than 1 ton per hectare average as a country.
Yes.
But I'll tell you that if you have your center pivot up and running and you are able to use it properly, some people have it, but they're not even using it properly.
Some of it is just laying in the garage.
No, well, it can't fit in the garage, but I'll tell you that it's just out there in the field. And some of the people are just using it because
to make pots?
All sorts of things. But what I'm saying that if you are able to use that, we can actually lift our production from 1 hectare to about 10, 15. I mean, we have been told stories of people going to 18. I've even had some 21.
Okay.
Tons per hectare.
It's possible.
It's possible. And all we're saying that all the things have to be in place at the right time, and then when you do that, then you are able to produce. So if we were to give every rural farmer good irrigation and just restrict him to just 1 hectare, and that 1 hectare produces 10 tons, we might actually have the one province of the country feeding the whole country.
The whole nation. And even talking of maybe imports like in wheat, soybeans, if you have irrigation, I think that is possible.
I was looking at our imports as a country. Yes. Soybean is in the top 3 or 4, I think, of the imports that we have in this country. But we have the capacity to do more than we can ever consume in this country of soybean. But it's one of our top imports. Why? Because we don't have irrigation. We have not invested in irrigation equipment and maybe even drying facilities, because that's other key thing.
Yes.
Because you when you do your irrigation, you want to go in early to be able to get your heat units like in maize. You have to go in early.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to go. So that means you have to remove your wheat early and be able to dry it, and then get in with your maize quite early and get all your heat units.
Yes.
And then you are able to produce your maximum times, your potential is able to come out.
Yes.
So, and you can't go in early when you don't have the irrigation.
And maybe pay off your debt. Yes. Pay your laborers. Yes.
And then farming becomes a business.
Yes. Yeah. That way it is considered a business. Yeah. Now, as we look further into this topic, factors to consider when looking into purchasing an irrigation equipment. And when I say factors, Mr. Sibanda, I'm looking for you to be really clear and straight to the point with our audience, because with our economic conditions at the moment, you would find that the factor that they will consider is maybe the cost. If something is cheap, that's when you'll say, okay, I'm going to buy this. He's only been attracted and lured to it because it's cheap. Now, can you maybe cite viable factors that each and every farmer needs to consider when looking into investing in irrigation equipment, leaving cost aside?
Okay. Obviously, one is to look at his amount of water that he has access to.
Okay.
That's the first point. And second point, you have to look at which region
you're located in.
Yeah, you're located in, because our weather is slightly different.
Yes.
Surely if you're in Binga and the person in Marsh East, it's a completely different
they are
program.
2 different farmers.
Yeah. So you need to look at that. So you need to look at your weather, look at your soil.
Yes.
Look at your soil. It's unfortunate with our situation in Zim. People just get a system. You just import a system, whether it's a center pivot or whatever. It's imported as it is, and you just put it in your field and you just use it. But we for you to be able to get the best, you need to look at your soil first.
Yes.
What kind of soil are you using? Because different soils take water at different, rates
yes.
and all that, and so you need to look deep into your soil so that the idea of irrigating is not about just pouring water into the field. The idea of irrigating is giving enough water
to the
at
plant.
the right time to the plant. So the soil is your medium, it takes the water, it keeps the water. So you need to know how much your soil, how much water can it take at a given time.
Right, Mr. Spandas, that was very direct and straight to the point. Viewers, we are going on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, viewers, for staying tuned to ZBC TV. This is Agricultural New Directions, Agri-Business, and we are talking of investing in irrigation equipment at the moment in the Zimbabwean agricultural industry. Now, Mr. Spanda, earlier on we were talking of factors to consider when purchasing irrigation equipment. Now, maybe just for the sake of time diverting you away from that a bit, let us talk of how irrigation equipment enhances productivity. Because there is production, then there is being productive. How does that enhance productivity in our local farming systems at the moment?
Like I just said earlier on, you can actually lift a farmer from 1-2 tons a hectare.
Yes.
To on maize, that is to 10, 12, 13 tons per hectare, and I think that's a big difference.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to do as Zimbabweans right now. If you just analyze the budgets that we have for our seed, analyze the budget that we have for our fertilizers, our power that we use as farmers,
our farm laborers,
everything that we put in place, and to think that all those things put together without irrigation, they add up to a lot of nothing.
And even in agriculture, I understand that our Zimbabwean farmers, not just Zimbabwean farmers, every farmer does his work, his activities on his farm with anticipation, anticipating yield, anticipating the fact that he was going to repay his debt, his children is going to send to school. But now, if you do not have irrigation, that one factor that consolidates all the others together, I just feel like someone will not be practicing proper agriculture, decorum or etiquette. Now, as we talk further, Mr. Sbanda, we understand that as we were having this discussion, you were mainly talking of the center pivot as an effective means of irrigation that Zimbabwean farmers should adopt. Now, what your recommendations to our small-scale farmers, subsistence farmers, A1 farmers, then to our commercial farmers, looking firstly at the subsistence farmers, what mode of irrigation would you advise them to adopt?
I think things like drip.
Yes.
Would do very well for a very small farmer.
Yes.
Would do very well for a very small farmer. It's affordable, and he's able to manage it. You might not even need electricity to run with it.
Yes.
Yeah, if you just have your nice diesel pump into an overhead tank, and then it's flowing into your 1 hectare field.
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Rats can eat
the pipes, the plastic pipes.
From time to time. But I think it's affordable.
And it's manageable, it's easy to replace.
And I'm thinking that a small farmer Kumusha can afford to sell moments like 2-3.
Yes.
And install a 1
and
hectare.
And acquire drip irrigation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if that one farmer does that, he is set. I mean, he is set up for the next. Maybe if it's a 3-year thing, he's set for the next 3 years. And he immediately gets out of poverty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because now
like
he can as
immediately.
well maybe do horticultural produce. For example, during off season, someone might be doing tobacco and might be doing maize, but during the off season, you still need to eat, you still need to survive, you still
That's
need to
true.
pay bills. Your kids still need to go to school, medical bills and stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe I think the fact that you're talking of drip irrigation really caters for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it does a good job. But we've also at Maka decided to be very innovative.
Yes.
Our center pivot starts on 0.9 of a hectare.
Really?
Yes, you have 1 hectare center pivot. You have actually what we do.
0.9.
Yes, just 1 hectare. You can have your center pivot. That's just 1 hectare. Irrigating.
That's innovative.
People always think of center pivots like very big things.
In my own mind, Mr. Span, I'm one of those people who's always thought of center pivots running from 100 meters,
No.
50 meters, catering for those huge wheat fields or maize fields. But now that you're talking that there is a 0.9.
Yeah. Fine,
Yes.
I would prefer to agree that the smaller the machine, the more expensive it is. But
Okay.
I'll tell you that if you look at this lifespan,
Okay.
it's something that would actually pay off. But you can have, actually in Zimbabwe, people have learned that maybe there's a 10 hectare, there's a 5 hectare, there's a 7 hectare. There's nothing like that. You can get
Okay.
a center pivot for any size field.
Now you're
Tailor-made.
talking where I really wanted you to get to, Mr. Spanda. Let's talk of those center pivots.
Yeah.
Because our Zimbabwean farmers, our A1 farmers, and even some commercial farmers are actually a bit skeptical and afraid to adopt that mode of irrigation. Just that thing when they think pivot, center pivot, they think of 100-meter things and so maybe as you get right into it, maybe educate our audience, enlighten them more on what you mean when you say center pivots.
I'm sure a lot of Zimbabweans have seen the center pivots. They've come out on TV so many times. But I'll tell you that what we do at Maka is that we go to the ground.
Okay.
We measure your field.
Yes.
We see that your field is 23.56 hectares.
Okay.
Yeah, your sector is that much. And we go and design a machine primarily for that size of a field.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's designed to your specifications. And we look at the soil and say, what kind of soil do we have here? There's what we call the sprinkler pack.
Okay.
Yeah. So the water comes into the machine, but the thing that releases your water onto the ground has to be monitored.
Yes.
Because at times you want to release a lot of water at once. At times you want to release it. So that rate of application is monitored by the speed at which your machine is turning,
Okay.
and the speed that what we call the sprinkler pack.
Yes.
So where you know how many liters I'm putting per square meter per hour.
Okay.
So you measure that. So you are able to calculate and put the right amount of water at the right amount of time on the right type of soil.
Okay.
So this is a tailor-made. Unfortunately, because mostly we've been importing these things. Kana uchiimporta ex-Japuka,
Yes, you are not like with them at the moment.
Yes. But we have the advantage of the fact that we are making it locally, so we make it specifically to the needs of your
Zimbabwean
field.
farmers.
Yes, not of just Zimbabwean farmers, of your specific field. You and the neighbor, you might have the same farm. This field and that field are 2 different fields.
Okay.
And they might have 2 different sprinkler packs, because the other one is on sandy soil.
Yes.
The other one is on clay soils.
Yes.
And so you might have 2 sprinkler packs. But because we personally been importing these things, so it's one jacket fits all.
Now, as we get into that as well, Mr. Spanda, let's talk about that you were saying. Farmers are neighbors. I acquire a center pivot. He then goes straight to that same center pivot because I have it. Let's talk about, a work study, studying your farm, understanding your farm, your terrain, your soils, your needs, your activities. Let's talk about that as a factor that affects the type of irrigation you are going to acquire.
I mentioned to you earlier on that farming is a science.
Yes.
Over and above being a business. So there's lots of factors that come. Like I said, not even on your neighbors in the same farm.
Yes.
You might have different setups because of the slope on this field. just different terrain, irregular slope, that one is on a flat ground, and you want to manage, because the one that's on a slope, if you put in lots of water at once, the water will flow away with your
that's
nutrients.
just a rundown, erosion and
This is it.
gully
On the other field,
formation.
you can maybe afford to, if it's nice and flat, you can afford to be generous with the water, knowing
that all of it is going to seep right through into
after studying
the
soil as well and seeing how the situations. So all these things are different, and they need to be taken into perspective whenever you are doing your irrigation. And when we do that, then we become business people, and then we are literally getting our nation out to where we want it to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this was a very interesting topic, Mr. Sibanda. I would like to thank you for joining us today. But before we close, just a word of advice, a snippet of advice to our Zimbabwean farmers or anyone else who's watching this program.
I think it's time to invest in irrigation.
Okay.
And I think as Maka, we've tried to meet that need. We've been hearing about people talking about center people from wherever, all over the world. We've said to ourselves, let's do this thing in our own background, in our own backyard. And we're able to meet this thing, and we're able to meet the demands of this place. And I think farmers should take time to invest in irrigation. It is so key. It can never be overemphasized.
It is pivotal, like the center pivot.
Can never say it better, my sister.
There you had it, viewers. We're talking of investing in irrigation equipment. I was with the Chief Executive Officer of Maka Irrigation, Mr. Innocent Sibanda. Thank you for gracing our platform with your presence today.
Thank you.
So from me, your host, Wadzanai Manyore. Join us again next week, same place, same time.